Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, welcome to the awards presentation ceremony for the 2021 National Newspaper Awards. I'm Dalal Sabra, and it is an honor to serve as your host for this event. Bien que nous aurions bien aimé nous réunir à nouveau en personne après avoir tenu des galas virtuels au cours des 2 dernières années, nous avons décidé il y a quelques mois que la prudence est mère de sûreté. Espérons pour l'an prochain. Although this is a virtual event, it is important to acknowledge that the home base for the NNAs is the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Tonight's event honors the finest Canadian journalism of 2021, as published by newspapers, news agencies, and digital news organizations, from big cities to small towns. 69 judges had the monumental task of selecting the very best work from nearly 900 entries in 22 categories. Au cours des 90 prochaines minutes, nous allons annoncer les lauréats de ces catégories et à la fin de l'exercice, nous dévoilerons le nom du ou de la journaliste de l'année pour 2021. Mais d'abord, nous devons remercier nos commanditaires qui ont contribué à réaliser cet événement grâce à leur soutien financier.
Hi, I'm Pat Pellegrini, President and CEO of Vividata. Vividata has been providing audience research to magazines and newspapers for over 40 years. Our business has evolved to address significant changes in the media industry, but never more so than in the past 3 or 4 years. The rapid growth of digital has led publishers to look at new and innovative ways to reach Canadians. It's also led us to work with new partners as we find the best methods for delivering online and offline audiences. The consumer research Vividata offers can be used by any type of newspaper or media to profile audiences beyond just your readership. As an industry association, we see ourselves increasingly as advocates or ambassadors for media, helping you leverage your newspapers through world-class research. Vividata is leading the charge and will continue to deliver and develop insights on audiences, wherever they're consuming media.
Good evening, everyone. John Fraser here from the National News Media Council of Canada. I'm here on behalf of the Council to support the National Newspaper Awards and all of tonight's winners. I send hearty congratulations. I can remember when I first won a National Newspaper Award. It was a long time ago, 1972 or 3. That's half a century. But I'm still in the business, and one of the things that sustained me in this business was knowing that I had the support of my peers, and it was a great thing, and that's why everyone who's winning an award tonight will feel the same way. On behalf of the Council, I want to just say that we are there also to support excellence in journalism by helping to maintain the highest possible standards in fairness and accuracy. We are the successor to all the old press councils in the country, and we try and honor what they set up and what we go forward with. So congratulations, everyone, and have a great evening. Thank you.
In addition to Vividata and the National News Media Council, we also want to give a special thank you to our friends at Cision. Their newswire, powered by CNW, gets our message into newsrooms throughout the year. Cision will release the full list of this year's results soon after the show ends. For the past few years, we have honored important figures in Canadian journalism by naming awards after them. This year, that list has grown to 9, with the addition of the John Hondrick Award for Project of the Year and the Marianne Shad Carey Award for Columns. Nous remercions les commanditaires de ces prix pour leur soutien et la reconnaissance de l'importance du journalisme de qualité dans notre démocratie. Voici un aperçu des grands noms qui ont été associés à ces prix. The George Brown Award for Investigations pays tribute to the founder of the Globe, who made it his mission to demand that governments apply both fairness and compliance with constitutional principles. George Brown's Globe of the 1800s set out accusations of corruption and double-dealing, and backed them up with hard evidence. This award honoring investigative journalism that afflicts the comfortable is sponsored by the Globe and Mail. The John Wesley Defoe Award for Politics honors the longtime editor of the Winnipeg Free Press, who is often called the greatest Canadian journalist of his time. During his 43 years as editor, the Free Press was considered one of the great newspapers of the world, and John Defoe's writing was required reading in the corridors of power. This award is sponsored by Ron Stern. Le prix E. Cora Hind pour le journalisme spécialisé rend hommage à l'une des pionnières dans les annales du journalisme canadien. E. Cora Hind a été non seulement la première femme à travailler comme reporter, mais elle a aussi participé au mouvement des suffragettes contribuant à la lutte pour que les femmes obtiennent le droit de vote. The John Hondrick Award for Project of the Year pays tribute to a man who had an outstanding career at the Toronto Star as a reporter, foreign correspondent, editor, publisher, and chair of the board. John Hondrick was a lifelong advocate for excellence and integrity in journalism, and newspapers' important role in preserving a healthy democracy. As publisher, he advocated for critical public issues such as national unity, youth unemployment, racial diversity, healthcare, and the promotion of literacy. He also personally sponsored education for journalists in Africa. This award is sponsored by the Hondrick family. Le prix Bob Levin pour le reportage bref honore un véritable réviseur de rédaction. Bob Levin comprenait la puissance d'une histoire qu'on raconte, mais aussi la nuance du choix de chacun des mots. Réservé, attentif et avisé, Bob Levin était le genre de réviseur que tout journaliste souhaite. Quelqu'un qui peut vous aider à trouver une expression pour votre article dans un ton que vous n'aviez jamais pensé imaginer. Ce prix est commandité par le Globe and Mail. Le prix Claude Ryan pour l'éditorial rend hommage à un homme qui a eu une grande influence dans le monde du journalisme au Québec. Claude Ryan a été un directeur de grand renom du journal Le Devoir, avant de devenir leader du Parti libéral du Québec et, à ce titre, chef du camp du non lors du référendum de 1980 sur la souveraineté. Ce prix est commandité par la famille Ryan. Le prix Marianne Chad Carey pour la chronique rend hommage à une éditrice de journal du 19e siècle qui a joué un rôle de pionnière. Née aux États-Unis et élevée par des parents noirs libérés qui ont été très actifs pour l'abolition de l'esclavage, Marianne Chad Carey s'est établie dans le sud-ouest ontarien au début des années 1850. Elle y a fondé le Provincial Freeman, un journal de combat pour l'abolition de l'esclavage et la libération complète des personnes ayant été réduites à l'esclavage. La devise du journal était « L'autonomie est la véritable voie vers l'indépendance ». The William Southam Award for Long Feature is in honor of a Canadian newspaper publisher who rose from a 12-year-old paperboy to founder of what became the country's first and largest newspaper group. His name lives on in the William Southam Journalism Fellowships at the University of Toronto's Massey College. This award is sponsored by the Fisher, Bowen, and Balfour families. Le prix Norman Webster pour le reportage international rend hommage à un homme qui a eu une carrière influente remarquable au Globe and Mail. On se souvient plus particulièrement de Norman Webster pour sa couverture de la diplomatie du ping-pong au début des années 1970, quand les relations ont commencé à s'ouvrir entre la Chine et l'Occident. Ce prix est commandité par la famille Webster. Et maintenant, place au spectacle. The biting, sharp, and cutting nature of Michael D. Adder's cartoons for the Halifax Chronicle Herald and Toronto Star never fails to make you think. His detailed drawing style pulls you in, but it's the symbolism that makes his work truly outstanding. This was evident in a cartoon showing the COVID World Marathon on a Mobius strip, or the prominent donkey in the Conservatives versus Reality cartoon. Judges said D. Adder cartoon topics are timely, relevant, and appeal to a broad audience, and all of them make tremendous use of his distinct wit. The strength of Graham McKay's cartoons for the Hamilton Spectator is the clear and pointed messaging, whether he's lampooning Donald Trump for the insurrection on Capitol Hill or Doug Ford's credibility on COVID. McKay uses words as wisely as images, emphasizing the no in the word genocide. He portrays the grim reality of Canada's residential school scandal with a haunting image of Indigenous children being transformed into chalk lines. And he offers a hilarious view of anti-vax protesters being offered brain transplants. Judges said McKay's cartoons achieve their editorial purpose every time. The poignant cartoons Bruce McKinnon creates for the Halifax Chronicle-Herald stand out for his skilled use of symbolism and exaggeration, whether calling out Canada's disturbing record on Indigenous children or skewering the thinking of anti-vaxxers. McKinnon's cartoons are imbued with edge and irony without losing their entertainment value, such as an image of political leaders going nowhere on stationary bikes. His clear and clever messaging hits the mark with Donald Trump and wind-up toys wearing Make America Great Again ball caps. Judges said McKinnon's cartoons push you to keenly study each thought-provoking detail. The award for editorial cartooning goes to Bruce McKinnon of the Halifax Chronicle-Herald. Avec le 20e anniversaire de l'attentat du 11 novembre approchant et la crise en Afghanistan, Magdalene Boutros du Devoir s'est rendue à Pakistan pour parler aux gens ordinaires. Elle a rencontré des réfugiés, parlé à des étudiants et s'est intéressée à la présence croissante de la Chine dans la région. Ces reportages tracent un portrait saisissant de cette partie du monde que les journalistes canadiens ont rarement visité depuis la fin de la mission militaire du Canada. Le départ des troupes américaines d'Afghanistan et la prise du pouvoir des talibans qui a rapidement suivi, juste avant sa publication, ont rendu encore plus pertinent le travail de Magdalene Boutros. Les juges ont dit qu'il est fort impressionnant que des reportages aient été réalisés par un journal qui n'a pas de correspondant à l'étranger et seulement un budget limité pour la couverture des affaires internationales. When the Taliban swept the victory in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of U.S. troops, the Globe and Mail's Mark McKinnon combined enthralling reporting and personal experience to shed light on the chaotic mess. He documented the unfolding humanitarian disaster and the complex challenges the country faced as he witnessed people growing hungrier and angrier. McKinnon also focused on some individuals whose lives were threatened because they had worked with Western news organizations. He spent 3 sleepless weeks concocting one escape route after another for translators who had worked with the Globe, as well as their families. McKinnon's deeply affecting account revealed the intimate relationships foreign correspondents build while working closely with locals. The Globe and Mail's Nathan Vanderklip set out to the U.S.-Mexico border to interview desperate migrants. He documented the construction of a fence meant to seal the border, replacing the infamous and unfinished Trump wall. In a compelling piece that reads like an adventure novel, Vanderklip recounted trekking with migrant families through the Darien Gap, a remote region between Colombia and Panama that is one of the world's most dangerous and lawless places. He brought a fresh eye to the global issue of migration and its implications, and touched on Haiti, climate change, and nationalism. Judges said Vanderklip improved readers' understanding of a complicated and long-standing crisis. The Norman Webster Award for International Reporting goes to Mark McKinnon of the Globe and Mail. In editorials for the Globe and Mail that are accessible and well-argued, David Ebner tackles significant issues in a way readers can understand. Writing about Canada's housing market, he went against popular opinion to propose a capital gains tax on the sale of principal residences. Writing about the environment, he drove home the dangers of climate change by deftly connecting deadly weather events in British Columbia to scientific realities. In another editorial about climate change, Ebner called for Canada's energy regulator to get serious about net zero emissions by 2050. 3 days later, the regulator changed its approach along the lines of what Ebner had argued was necessary. Les éditoriaux de Stéphanie Gramont pour la presse animent les conversations autour de la table familiale et, d'une certaine façon, façonnent la vue publique au Québec. Stéphanie Gramont s'est dit en faveur du passeport vaccinal bien avant que les gouvernements, au Québec et ailleurs, implantent une telle politique. Après la fermeture urgente d'un pont et l'annonce des plans de construction d'un tunnel sous-marin, elle a évoqué le problème fondamental et les coûts reliés à la réparation des structures existantes plutôt qu'à leur remplacement. Et Stéphanie Gramont a souligné la pénurie de médecins de famille et les délais pour obtenir un rendez-vous que vivent plusieurs personnes qui ont déjà un médecin. Peu après, le gouvernement québécois a présenté un projet de loi pour assurer que les patients puissent voir un médecin en moins de 36 heures. At its best, editorial writing hits readers in the gut while providing thoughtful and necessary insights. The Waterloo Region Record's John Rowe meets this standard with 3 elegantly written editorials that touch on important issues. Championing the need for communities to embrace tent cities, Rowe galvanized readers and gave hope to homeless people in Waterloo Region. He mocked the absurdity of a sexual assault survivor being fined for revealing her own identity, a decision that was later overturned. And showing foresight, he argued that Canada's next Governor-General should be of Indigenous descent, which is exactly what transpired with the appointment of Mary Simon. The Claude Ryan Award for editorial writing goes to David Ebner of the Globe and Mail. The commercial vacancy rate in Calgary is an unofficial barometer of the city's economy, mirroring the booms and busts of the oil patch. But what does a 30% vacancy rate actually look like? This story needed to be shown as much as told, which posed some challenges for the Globe and Mail's Jeremy Agius. He had to research and verify each building's location and vacancy records against Google Earth imagery he used for the base map. Through his use of infographics, photo illustrations, line drawings, and aerial footage, Agius brought a data-driven story to life. Quand la ville de Longueuil a annoncé un plan visant à tuer de 15 à 30 cerfs de Virginie dans un parc de la localité, les élus ont fait face à tant de protestations, incluant des menaces de mort, qu'ils ont dû renoncer au projet. Mais le problème n'est pas disparu. La journaliste de la presse, Judith Lachapelle, a créé un BD-reportage afin d'expliquer pourquoi l'élimination des cerfs était la moins mauvaise solution envisagée par les biologistes. Les juges ont dit que sa présentation était rafraîchissante et que la forme de bande dessinée rendait abordable un sujet ésotérique. Quand Longueuil a éventuellement annoncé que 60 cerfs allaient être éliminés, la décision était bien accueillie. Fire in the Sky delved into a terrifying blaze that brought a fire crew to its knees and changed the way Toronto fights high-rise building fires. The story was a blend of what happened that day and the science behind wind-driven fires in that type of building. To support both storytelling aspects, Nathan Pilla created a 3D model of the building based on rough floor plans and animated it to illustrate the fire's start and spread. That work, as well as videos and photos prepared by Kelsey Wilson and Tanya Pereira, added dynamism to the presentation, which judges called evocative and powerful. The award for presentation and design goes to Nathan Pilla, Kelsey Wilson, and Tanya Pereira of the Toronto Star. Bernard Brault, photographe à la presse, a capté le moment explosif de jubilation sur le visage des femmes de l'équipe canadienne de soccer, après que Julia Grosso a compté le but gagnant en fusillade lors du match pour la médaille d'or aux Olympiques de Tokyo. Les juges ont apprécié les éléments de reportage, qui soulignent aussi bien la première médaille d'or historique au soccer pour le Canada que la pandémie de COVID-19 en raison de laquelle le match a dû se jouer dans un stade vide. L'angle qu'a choisi Bernard Brault souligne l'extase sur les visages, et grâce à la profondeur de champ, les sièges vides sont bien visibles, mais sans diminuer l'importance du sujet principal. It's the excitement that makes this photo by the Globe and Mail's Melissa Tate unforgettable. The uniformly joyful expression on the face of every player on Canada's soccer team as they react to their gold medal win in Tokyo. Judges said focusing on the large group of celebrating players rather than the goal scorer or goalkeeper was smart. The straight-on composition clearly shows each player's face at the instant they knew they'd won. Empty seats in the background remind viewers that these Olympics were played during a pandemic. The Globe and Mail's Melissa Tate took an artistic approach to athletics when she photographed sprinter Andre DeGrasse during the Tokyo Olympic Games. Tate effectively used a panned slower shutter speed, combined with a shallow depth of field, to isolate DeGrasse's head and shoulders from the rest of the pack, and from everything else in the image. This approach enhances the viewer's sense of motion and speed. Framing the runners over the Olympic rings on the track adds a perfect touch. Judges said capturing the image required excellent timing. The award for sports photo goes to Melissa Tate of the Globe and Mail for her photo of Canada's celebrating soccer players. The Toronto Star's Joe Callahan believes the best sports stories can have nothing and everything to do with sports. He looked at Kyle Lowry's departure from the Toronto Raptors in terms of the crater left behind for his adoring fans. He took readers on a journey with short-sighted swimmer Maggie McNeil, who became a media darling after winning Olympic gold. And he offered a gripping recreation of history and urgent social issues in a long feature about one of sport's most iconic figures, Muhammad Ali, crossing paths with Ontario's human rights legislation 55 years ago. Judges called Callahan a reporter at the top of his game, a delight and a privilege to read. La médaille d'or pour l'équipe féminine de soccer du Canada. Une rivalité au football entre écoles secondaires. Une exclusivité sur la lutte menée par Jonathan Drouin contre l'anxiété des mois avant qu'il s'absente des Canadiens de Montréal et rate les éliminatoires de la LNH. Le chroniqueur Alexandre Pratt a couvert une vaste gamme de sujets pour la presse en 2021 et il l'a fait selon les juges avec brio, style et ingéniosité. Ce n'est pas ce genre de lecture où on absorbe passivement l'information, ont-ils dit. C'est une lecture où on vous plonge, où on vous amène à découvrir, où on vous incite à participer, sentir, réagir, apprécier et savourer. Mais avant tout, ont ajouté les juges, en lisant Alexandre Pratt, vous vous sentez concerné. It began with a comment from one of Canada's Winter Olympians that most members of her team suffered from eating disorders, and little was being done to help them. That comment sparked a 6-month investigation, during which the Globe and Mail's Grant Robertson and Rachel Brady were able to pull back the curtain on the sometimes toxic culture of competitive sports, in which athletes are confused, scared, isolated, ignored, and silenced. The implications went well beyond Olympians, to the youngest athletes at the grassroots level. Judges said the 4-part series featured masterful storytelling, analysis, and first-person interviews, and is an example for the ages of journalism that can help right wrongs, heal wounds, and change the world. And the award for sports goes to Grant Robertson and Rachel Brady of the Globe and Mail. A 4-part series published by RMOtoday.com in Canmore, Alberta, examined accidental deaths of skiers and climbers caught in avalanches during guided trips in the Rocky Mountains. Exploring the circumstances, aftermath, and ramifications of such deaths, Tanya Faubert, Evan Bueller, and Greg Colgan reported that the National Guiding Association and its regional members were entirely self-regulated. Accident reports were not mandatory, and investigations were led by fellow members of the association. This project used data to visualize the number of deaths resulting from avalanches. Judges called the package impressive enterprise journalism from a small team, and one that highlighted shortcomings in the protection of life and leisure in Canada's backcountry. He was a charismatic man who seemed beyond reproach, a respected public figure who held influential roles in academia and the church, and considerable sway over young people for decades. Even after University of King's College professor Wayne Hankey was charged with sexual assault in the 1980s, journalists appeared to have little interest. But Andrew Rankin of the Halifax Chronicle-Herald dug into Hankey's history and found a disturbing pattern of alleged abuse that had been overlooked, sometimes willfully. Rankin earned the trust of key sources and witnesses, who courageously added their stories to the public record. Judges said Rankin's writing was compelling and original, and the impact of his reporting is undeniable. Delbert Painted Nose was on the streets for 3 years before he found a place to live. As a recovering substance user, he found himself trapped in a horrible paradox. Without a home, he couldn't stay sober, but unless he was sober, there was no place for him to live. A series by Zach Vachera, Matt Smith, Dave Breckenridge, and Thea James of the Saskatoon Star Phoenix explored Saskatchewan's overdose crisis and the systems of inequality that drive it. The 7 stories highlighted disjointed efforts to help people struggling with substance abuse and explored possible solutions. Judges called it exceptional work that painted a disturbing portrait of a toxic drug crisis. The award for local reporting goes to Tanya Faubert, Evan Bueller, and Greg Colgan of RMO Today. In columns for the Globe and Mail, Andrew Coyne uses logical reasoning, elegant writing, and a well-informed voice to bring his arguments to life. His submissions explored 3 topics: the terrible legacy of Canada's residential schools, why the Conservatives lost the federal election, and how truth and falsehood can coexist under freedom of speech. In the residential schools column, Coyne argued that allowing the schools to abuse and even kill Indigenous children for decades created an immense, unspeakable shame that must be worn not only by those most directly responsible, but by Canada as a whole. Judges said he untangled the complex issues of the day and captured the zeitgeist of 2021. 2000 personnes sont descendues dans les rues de Montréal pour protester contre la vaccination et les mesures sanitaires. Isabelle Haché de La Presse aurait bien pu écrire cela au sujet de la pandémie de COVID-19, mais en fait, elle décrivait une manifestation qui se déroulait durant la pandémie de variole en 1885. En écrivant avec style, précision historique et brio, selon les juges, Isabelle Haché a établi des parallèles entre les attitudes et comportements de notre époque et ceux du 19e siècle. Ces autres soumissions comprennent un examen de la loi qui pourrait éventuellement permettre aux patients atteints de la maladie d'Alzheimer d'avoir recours à l'aide médicale à mourir. Et elle a écrit de façon émouvante sur le réveil collectif tardif du Canada après la découverte de 215 tombes anonymes près d'un pensionnat autochtone à Kamloops en Colombie-Britannique. Karen Pugliese's gut-wrenching columns on residential schools were written after the remains of 215 children were discovered in Kamloops, BC, a story that shook the country. Pugliese, also known as Babamadis, hooked readers with heartbreaking accounts of the pain the residential school system caused and the intergenerational trauma it continues to inflict on Indigenous peoples. Her storytelling humanized the nameless children found buried in the school grounds and gave Canadians a window into the grief rippling through Indigenous communities across the country in the wake of the news. Judges said Pugliese's columns were distinguished not only by the depth of the reporting, but her unique and personal perspective. The Marianne Shad Carey Award for columns goes to Karen Pugliese of the National Observer. Un écrivain qui simule sa propre mort et garde l'affaire secrète durant des années, cela ne pourrait arriver qu'en fiction, n'est-ce pas? Mais c'est arrivé dans la vraie vie. Hugo Dumas de la presse a révélé l'incroyable histoire de François Pagé, un mystérieux scénariste sorti de nulle part qui a écrit 4 séries à succès. Hugo Dumas a brossé un portrait de l'auteur reclus qui refuse d'accorder des entrevues et qui est absent des réseaux sociaux. L'invraisemblable 2e épisode du reportage laisse voir un personnage véritablement énigmatique qui a soigneusement mis en scène sa propre mort en 2014. D'une plume habile et à l'aide d'entrevues révélatrices, Hugo Dumas a examiné à quel point le succès personnel peut bousculer les notions de créativité et ce que signifie la réussite. Kate Taylor's portfolio of work for the Globe and Mail raises the bar on arts reporting. From skeptical analysis of non-fungible tokens to a forensic investigation into Nazi-looted art, and a deep dive into the fraught morality of keeping human remains at museums, Taylor finds compelling stories off the beaten path. She pulls in history, finance, anthropology, ethics, and law to illuminate and explain the art world's most important lessons. Judges said Taylor's rigorous approach manages to say something about the world beyond art. Her deep reporting skills, superb narrative approach, and eye for a great character combine to make her an example of arts reporting at its finest. Jen Zarati's profile of an Inuit artist pulls Winnipeg Free Press readers into the world of its intensely shy, private subject. At the heart of this feature are the artist's own words, which are raw and telling. She describes growing up with art in her blood, sharing traditions and stories through her sculptures, and finding solace in her work. It's a fascinating window into an important artist who grew up in an Inuit outpost camp on Baffin Island. Judges noted how diligently Zarati had worked to earn her subjects' trust. Her piece stands out for elevating Inuit art through an artist, her family history, and her creative path. The award for arts and entertainment goes to Kate Taylor of the Globe and Mail. Through his contacts at a Toronto hospital, Canadian press photographer Nathan Dennett was able to secure access to an intensive care unit at the height of the pandemic. This dramatic photo shows a 60-year-old COVID-19 patient fighting for his life as a doctor provides urgent care. This scene unfolded within seconds in front of Dennett, who was already taking photos when the patient was rushed in. The man's eye seems to beseech the viewer. Judges said the image perfectly illustrates the painful and claustrophobic experience for patients and frontline workers fighting a devastating disease. When word came that 2 Canadians were being released after spending nearly 3 years in a Chinese prison, photographers monitored all available channels for information about their returns. Canadian press photographer Frank Gunn headed to Toronto's Pearson Airport, following the flight path of a Canadian Forces jet. It was a hunch that paid off. Gunn positioned himself perfectly to get the shot that led media coverage, Michael Kovrick's emotional reunion with his wife. Judges noted the clean, simple lines of the image, with the Canadian insignia and the nose of the plane pointing to the couple embracing. Avec le blanc des nuages et le bleu du ciel qui se reflètent merveilleusement sur l'eau calme, un homme marche sur une étroite bande de pavés, la seule partie de la route qui n'est pas inondée. La photo de Martin Tremblay de la presse est une frappante illustration de l'étendue des inondations historiques à Abbotsford, en Colombie-Britannique l'automne dernier. Les juges ont remarqué la couleur et l'équilibre de l'image. La tranquillité qu'elle dépeint dissimule la perte tragique de bétail dans la crue des eaux qui a aussi forcé des milliers de personnes à quitter leur domicile et a causé des milliards de dollars en dommages. The award for general news photo goes to Nathan Dennett of the Canadian Press. An incident at a Winnipeg hospital, a report of a homicide in rural Manitoba, a heavy police presence at a city house, There was no obvious connection at first, but through aggressive reporting, Malak Abbas, Dean Pritchard, and Paul Samin of the Winnipeg Free Press pulled together details from what turned out to be related crime scenes, with 2 people dead at one and a nursing supervisor in critical condition at the other. And they were able to connect the dots back to a nurse known for his strong anti-vaccination views. The Free Press uncovered all the important details of this story, presenting comprehensive portraits of the accused, the victims, and the heroic doctor who prevented more carnage. The Globe and Mail's coverage of the fire that destroyed Lytton, BC, went beyond the standard response to a breaking news event. The Globe's team of journalists turned a local crisis into an international issue, bringing the impact of climate change into clear focus. The challenge of getting reporters into the disaster zone added an extra layer to the already complex nature of the unfolding story. It was difficult to know where to go. Lytton was destroyed, its residents had been evacuated, and there was no access into the town. Nonetheless, readers received coverage that showed the personal impact of the devastation, as well as commentary that raised the alarm over climate change. The killings of a Muslim family out for an evening stroll, mowed down by a pickup truck driver in what police called an intentional hate crime, rocked London, Ontario, and reverberated across the country and around the world. Outstanding reporting and compelling storytelling by a team of London Free Press journalists presented the shocking story with almost unimaginable depth. The Free Press highlighted the impact on the community, while also reflecting the effect a racialized killing would have on the country and the world. Judges made special note of the opinion writing of Jane Sims, which they said brought out raw emotions and touched a reader's heart. The award for breaking news goes to the London Free Press. The Rogers corporate and family feud that gripped Canada's business world last year played out like the HBO drama Succession. It was one of the biggest business stories of the year, and the Toronto Star's Christine Dobby, Richard Warnica, Jacob Lawrence, and Doug Smith covered it with depth and clarity. The entry included a scoop on Edward Rogers' opposing plans to rehire Toronto Raptors president Masai Ujiri, a nuanced portrait that helped readers understand the man at the center of the battle, and a detailed start-to-finish account of one of the strangest business battles in Canadian history. Judges said the pieces showcased exclusive details, impeccable sourcing, and accessible, propulsive storytelling. Natasha and David Sharp, the husband and wife team that helmed Bridging Finance, looked like masters of risk with a seemingly bulletproof loan portfolio that churned out stable and sizable yields. Until it all came crashing down last spring, that is. The Globe and Mail's Greg MacArthur, Tim Kaladz, Joe Castaldo, and Wendy Stuick spent months investigating Bridging and the key players in the scandal. They uncovered financial tricks, misappropriation of funds, and millions of dollars moved offshore. They also discovered that Bridging's largest borrower appeared to have taken advantage of several First Nations communities. With investor losses expected to total around $1 billion, it's one of the largest investment scandals in Canada's history. The murder of George Floyd in the summer of 2020 sparked nationwide outrage and protests, and a sudden shift in corporate Canada. Hundreds of companies publicly signed on to the Black North Initiative, committing to improve diversity and combat systemic racism. A year later, the Globe and Mail's Vanmala Subramaniam, Claire O'Hara, James Bradshaw, and Jaron Kerr embarked on a months-long investigation to determine whether those companies had met their goals. Half of the signatories approached by the Globe declined to respond. Of those that did respond, only a handful reported increased diversity within their workforces. The journalists reported that while many companies had created committees focused on diversity, much less progress was being made on hiring employees of color. The award for business goes to Greg MacArthur, Tim Kaladz, Joe Castaldo, and Wendy Stuick of the Globe and Mail. Sharon Kirky of the National Post combines big-picture thinking, superb sources, vivid detail, and clear writing to produce consistently excellent health reporting. By spotting and reporting a crucial statistical error in an academic study on COVID vaccine side effects, Kirky muted a potential source of fake news about vaccine risk. Her reflection on vaccine envy offered insight into the public mood of the moment. She explained the eye-opening logic behind the ethical choices inherent in COVID triage. And looking beyond virus coverage, Kirky explained why researchers wanted to put a pig's kidney into a brain-dead human being and the ethical issues the proposal raised. In a time abounding in stories about the environment and climate change, Stéphane Labbé's work stands out. As Glacier Media's Climate and Environment Solutions reporter, Labbé approaches familiar subject matter in refreshingly distinctive ways. In crisp, well-researched stories about the benefits of urban tree planting, new and old ways to limit the damage from forest fires and the floods that often follow, and a foundation helping First Nations supplant trophy hunting with ecotourism, Labbé showed a firm understanding of his region's social and economic realities. Judges said he delves deeply into stories and focuses not only on problems and challenges, but on real achievements and solutions. 7 décès dus à la violence conjugale en 6 semaines au Québec ont poussé le Devoir à créer un secteur consacré au féminicide. Avec Amélie Pineda et Magdalene Boutros aux commandes, le journal a assuré une couverture sensible et soutenue de ce fléau. Dans des reportages empathiques qui vont au fond des choses, Amélie Pineda et Magdalene Boutros ont démontré la réalité de la violence maritale. Elles ont gagné la confiance de jeunes adultes dont la mère a été tuée. Et elles ont révélé les failles des approches officiellement sanctionnées, d'un système d'évaluation qui est rarement utilisé aux avertissements qui sont trop facilement ignorés. À la suite de leur reportage, le gouvernement du Québec a haussé ses dépenses pour l'aide aux victimes de violences conjugales. Le prix Iquarahain pour journalisme spécialisé est décerné à Amélie Pineda et Magdalene Boutros du Devoir. The Globe and Mail's Patrick Breathauer, Tom Cardoso, David Milstead, and Vanmala Subramaniam took a deep dive into the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, created to help employers keep paying wages during the first year of the pandemic. At more than $100 billion, it was the costliest assistance program in Canadian history. Their data-driven analysis found that some of that money went to thriving firms, asset managers of top-performing investment funds, and companies that had declared bankruptcy, so no jobs were being saved. The gripping series sparked change. The government rewrote the rules when it introduced new subsidy programs last year, and at least one large hedge fund manager paid back the money it had received. Journalists from Torstar and National Observer joined forces to expose the Ontario government's ties to developers and fast-tracking of developments, and to investigate the rebirth of a controversial proposed highway. Noor Javed, Steve Bust, Sheila Wang, and Emma McIntosh combed through thousands of public records and built a database of political donations. They exposed who stood to gain from major development projects and held politicians to account for their secretive decision-making. The story spurred complaints to the Ethics Commissioner, triggered an impact assessment, and secured a government pledge to expand Ontario's Greenbelt. They lifted a curtain on the money and power driving infrastructure investments that will help shape Ontario for years. In an era of packaged and marketed politics, readers want to know what's actually going on behind the scenes. The Toronto Star's Althea Raj offered that type of insight on two of the biggest political stories of 2021. The federal election campaign and the challenge Conservative leader Erin O'Toole faced afterwards. Raj's recounting of how the Liberals got their mojo back during the campaign was a definitive account of the election. Her piece on O'Toole's futile struggle to stave off critics while retaining control of a fractured party brought readers to the center of political action. Judges said that with these stories, Raj confirmed her place as one of Canada's most astute political commentators. The John Wesley Defoe Award for Politics goes to Althea Raj of the Toronto Star. Six jours par semaine, 7 heures par jour, l'artiste de scène Victor Pilon a déplacé 50 tonnes de sable d'une pile à l'autre. Et c'était envoûtant. Et la photo de l'artiste et de sa performance prise par Bernard Brault pour le Globe and Mail l'était tout autant. Le spectacle était dû à la mort du conjoint de Victor Pilon, décédé dans un accident d'automobile en 2017, mais cette mise en scène durant la pandémie rendait une question plus évidente. Le pelletage était-il la corvée du seul artiste ou la communauté devait elle aussi y mettre la main? Ce qui a frappé les juges, c'est le mouvement que Bernard Brault a capté au moment de l'impact. Evan Bueller of RMOtoday.com takes viewers into the frigid waters of Lake Minnewanka alongside an adventurous freediver. To capture the image, Bueller duct-taped a GoPro to a ski pole and stuck it in the water. Judges noted the underlying tension of the image between the stillness and beauty of the water and ice and the potentially deadly environment. The diver is surrounded by ice and silence. Judges described the photo as ethereal and said it evoked a feeling of peace. The diver's body language shows a reverence and communion with this underwater world. When the temperature soared to 37 degrees Celsius in Edmonton last summer, one man found the perfect place to cool down, the pool at City Hall. Canadian press photographer Jason Franson was struck by the scene, taking a photo he called Keeping Cool. The photo brings the moment to life. Viewers can feel the man going, "ah," as he cools off. Judges were impressed by the technical skill shown by Franson, who made the image from an angle that enhanced the shapes of the pool tiles, while the flowing fountains offered movement in the background. The award for feature photo goes to Evan Bueller of RMO Today. Take a relatively mundane event, a car theft, something that occurs 200 times a day in Canada. Then build a portrait of how cars are stolen, where they go, how they get there, why theft rates have skyrocketed, and how global criminals and terrorists benefit from it all. Describe it clearly, in words and video. And finally, help readers learn what they can do to protect their own cars, since police often turn a blind eye to the crime. It's a recipe for top-quality explanatory journalism, precisely what Kevin Donovan and Kelsey Wilson of the Toronto Star achieved. Donovan's own car being stolen served as the launchpad into a memorable piece. Des centaines de personnes au Québec sont filmées à leur insu dans les toilettes publiques alors qu'elles se déshabillent, se douchent ou même utilisent la toilette. Cela se produit parce que des caméras de surveillance miniatures sont largement disponibles chez les détaillants respectables comme Amazon. Marie-Claude Malbeuf de La Presse a expliqué la production et distribution de ce nouveau type de pornographie à travers la lentille féministe. Les coupables peuvent être des médecins, avocats ou comptables, ciblant des voisins, conjoints, même des clients, en cachant des caméras presque partout. Les juges ont dit que ce reportage pourrait servir en tant qu'article Wikipédia pour ce genre de crime. C'est le type de reportage qu'il vaut la peine de conserver et de partager pour aider des victimes potentielles à se protéger. In a year defined by the pandemic, Thieu Thanh Ha's story for the Globe and Mail about a coroner's inquiry into the toll at Quebec nursing homes deftly explains Canada's high rate of deaths in long-term care and the impact on thousands of distressed families. The piece sets out to answer the question driving important explanatory journalism. How could this have happened? Ha finds answers in thousands of pages of publicly available documents, interviews, and 7 weeks of testimony that show how gaps in each element of long-term care led to a massive failure. Judges said his story demonstrates how a deep narrative dive can explain and hold government to account. The award for explanatory work goes to Thu Tan Ha of the Globe and Mail. Marcus G's feature in the Globe and Mail is a poignant reminder of the other pandemic. Opioids receive much less attention than COVID-19, but have taken many more lives. G takes the reader to a handmade memorial, a garden of the unforgotten, for marginalized people who died but had no formal funeral or burial. Decorated with candles, painted rocks, and plastic flowers, the memorial grew as deaths mounted. G's unsentimental, sparsely written article seems to bring solace and hope to those who have lost loved ones to opioids. But its surprise ending kills that hope, as cold-hearted bureaucrats remove the memorial for violating a city bylaw without so much as a glance back. From late October to April, 10,000 crows spend the night in a BC office park, and every morning, Fidel Elegant rides his bike there to clean up the putrid bird poop they've left. In a well-structured and beautifully written tale, the Globe and Mail's Mike Hager focuses on two main characters, Elegant and the crows. Hints about Elegant's life are woven into the piece, and we learn he's happy in his minimum wage job. While the feature is character-driven, it also gives readers a window into the essential work done during the pandemic by people like Elegant. Judges praised the originality of the subject and said the style and simplicity of the writing made it an excellent read. In an age of endlessly polarized politics, John Mackey of the Vancouver Sun and Province offered readers a story that shows how adversaries can also be friends. Sam Sullivan is the former mayor of Vancouver. Tim Lewis is a former councillor who was one of his harshest critics. As Lewis puts it, he's right of Genghis Khan, and I'm left of Che Guevara. The men are both quadriplegic and often get mistaken for each other. Even though Sullivan is over 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, Lewis closer to 5 feet and 100 pounds. Mackey spins a light-hearted tale, offering what judges called an uplifting glimpse into the human side of leaders. The Bob Levin Award for Short Feature goes to Marcus G. of the Globe and Mail. MindGeek is one of the world's largest pornography companies, and shrouded in mystery. To lift the veil of secrecy on the Montreal company's online empire, the Globe and Mail's Joe Castaldo sifted through complicated corporate layers and drew on sources who have worked for and been affected by its operations. Castaldo's story traces MindGeek's history in Canada and follows the Canadian government's investigation into it, while illustrating the influence of foreign investors in a digital world where national laws are difficult to enforce. Judges described the feature as a powerful, tremendously well-researched piece that addresses a timely topic with serious consequences. The Man Who Stole a Hotel is a cautionary tale of human strengths and weaknesses. Tori Marlin of Capital Daily followed a convoluted trail of deceit to explore how a fugitive from U.S. justice managed to take control of a hotel that is both a local treasure and an internationally renowned destination. The piece reads like a jaw-dropping mystery novel, from its gripping introduction to its heartbreaking conclusion. Marlin's painstaking research shines a light on glaring flaws in the criminal justice system, and her clear prose makes the complex fraud she exposes accessible and understandable. Judges said Marlin's efforts combine brilliant research, fast-paced narrative, and evocative writing. In Promise After the Plague, Ryan Thorpe of the Winnipeg Free Press starts the day before the pandemic began and takes us through the year that followed. Stories of everyday people who didn't live to year's end are interwoven with thoughts of writers and philosophers, and connected to past events such as the Spanish flu pandemic. The pandemic's first year is given context that offers the possibility of a better tomorrow and reminds us of the importance of perspective and hope. Author Joan Didion once said, "We tell ourselves stories in order to live." That, judges said, is exactly what Thorpe's feature does. The William Southam Award for Long Feature goes to Tori Marlin of Capital Daily. When the city of Hamilton decided not to remove a statue of Sir John A. Macdonald from a downtown park following the discovery of unmarked graves at residential schools, a rally was organized in support of Indigenous healing. Protesters took matters into their own hands, throwing a rope around Macdonald's neck and pulling the statue to the ground. Barry Gray's photograph for the Hamilton Spectator showed the instant a Father of Confederation was toppled. The protesters are small, masked against COVID, and anonymous. On the skyline, construction cranes point to the future. Judges said the image captured what renowned photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson called the decisive moment. It wasn't a typical arrest. When a suspect fled the scene of a collision and ran into a weed-filled lake in an effort to escape, police borrowed a paddleboard from lifeguards and a paddle boat and canoe from nearby residents to chase him down. Judges said the photo by Tim Krochak of the Halifax Chronicle-Herald ticked all the boxes for capturing an unscripted drama. Krochak tracked the action and maneuvered into position to get the whole story in one beautifully composed image. With the right focal-length lens, he framed the big picture while getting an unobstructed view of the action, reactions, and emotions of all involved. It's a picture, judges said, that makes the viewer stop and linger. Chris Young was on assignment for the Canadian Press at a homeless encampment near downtown Toronto last summer. The city had issued trespass notices a month earlier. When residents refused to leave, police decided to forcefully remove them, sparking confrontations with residents and their supporters and leading to 26 arrests. Young's image captured the intensity on the face of a police officer as he strove to take down a protester. Judges said the photograph gave the viewer a ringside view of an unfolding story. The award for breaking news photo goes to Tim Krochak of the Halifax Chronicle-Herald. L'histoire honteuse des agressions commises sur des enfants au sein de l'Église catholique est bien connue. Ce qui l'est moins, ce sont l'étendue de ces agressions au Québec et les efforts déployés pour éviter de verser des compensations aux victimes. Magdalene Boutros et Ulysse Bergeron du Devoir ont entrepris de faire le point sur la situation. Ils ont identifié près de 10 000 victimes présumées et plus de 800 agresseurs présumés, y compris des religieuses et des prêtres. Ils ont aussi dévoilé les moyens utilisés par différentes congrégations pour éviter que les victimes aient accès à des millions de dollars en indemnités. À l'aide de témoignages émouvants de personnes qui ont été agressées, ces reportages clairs et concis rappellent éloquemment que les excuses et les promesses de réparation ont échoué à mettre un terme à cette tragédie. The Toronto Star's Kevin Donovan has been digging into the killings of billionaires Barry and Honey Sherman for 4 years. In a series of exclusive stories in 2021, he uncovered serious problems in the police investigation and many twists and turns in the case. He also pulled back the curtain on family succession battles and revealed serious impropriety by the Sherman Pharmaceutical Company, including price fixing in the United States. In addition to interviewing more than 250 people, Donovan has gone to court many times to argue for access to his state files and search warrant packages. Judges said it seems as though Donovan might solve this case before police do. Jennifer Leanne Watts, Benjamin Robert Cope, Sherry Fillion, 3 of 100 souls profiled in the Globe and Mail's coverage of Canada's opioid epidemic last year. This crisis is so terrifying that we will often turn away rather than get emotionally involved. Judges said what makes the cost of a crisis work is that reporters Andrea Wu and Marcus G. don't let readers turn away from the addicts and their friends and loved ones. Instead, we meet them in beautifully rendered portraits that resonate long after reading stops. The Globe's Ian Brown asks a provocative question. Since we need opioids to control pain, What can we do so they don't control us? The award for sustained news coverage goes to Andrea Wu, Marcus G., and Ian Brown of the Globe and Mail. Kevin Donovan's relentless focus on a heartbreaking cold case involving the mysterious death of a toddler led to a 5-part narrative crime series for the Toronto Star. Donovan spent 5 years digging into the case, conducting emotional interviews, and arguing in court to get critical documents unsealed. The series revealed how 2 police forces wrongly targeted innocent parents in the death of their son. A week after it was published, police reopened the case and charged the child's babysitter with manslaughter. Judges said that if journalism's highest calling is to pursue truth until it is found, death in a small town is an achievement that brings honor to us all. The Catholic Church agreed to pay residential school survivors $25 million in 2006, but later claimed monetary constraints prevented the payment. After children's remains were discovered at former residential schools last year, Globe and Mail reporters Tavia Grant, Tom Cardoso, and David Milstead set out to determine if there was any truth to that claim. They drilled into tax and financial records and discovered Catholic charities had at least $4 billion in assets. After the stories appeared, Canada's Catholic bishops unequivocally apologized for the trauma and suffering caused by the Church's involvement in residential schools, pledged to disclose records and work towards a papal visit to Canada, and relaunched a fundraising campaign for healing and reconciliation projects. In an 8-part series for the Winnipeg Free Press, Ryan Thorpe took readers inside Stony Mountain, Manitoba's only federal penitentiary. Doing time there, he learned, means dealing with overcrowding and violent gangs. Solitary confinement, supposedly banned, carries on under a new name, and inmates die with disturbing regularity. Yet, only 2 inquests have been called since 2017. Thorpe's series coincided with a national reckoning over the legacy of the residential school system. Canada's prisons are modern-day versions of that system. His reporting showed, with Indigenous prisoners subjected to second-class care and their deaths often going unreported. As a result of the series, Manitoba's Justice Minister tabled several years of overdue reports on deaths in custody. The George Brown Award for Investigations goes to Tavia Grant, Tom Cardoso, and David Milstead of the Globe and Mail. A year into the pandemic, Globe and Mail journalists noticed a distinct difference in the rates of COVID-19 spread and recovery around the Greater Toronto Area. And nowhere was this more obvious than in Northeast Brampton, home to thousands of racialized essential workers. It consistently registered Ontario's highest per capita cases of COVID-19. The Globe developed a data-driven and community-focused plan to explore the reasons behind the numbers, which evolved into a project that lasted most of 2021. The newspaper partnered with journalists and photographers living in Brampton or connected to its diverse populations, leveraging community connections and enabling interviews in multiple languages. They sent a survey translated into Punjabi, Hindi, Gujarati, and Urdu to 82,000 homes and businesses. Judges said the Globe not only served the local community with its sobering reality check on the Canadian mosaic, but spoke to every corner of the country. La jeune fille n'avait que 15 ans lorsqu'elle a été abattue à Montréal en février dernier, la première victime innocente de ce qui est devenu une flambée d'incidents impliquant des armes à feu au Québec. 2 autres adolescents sont décédés plus tard, dans des circonstances similaires. La presse a rassemblé une équipe de reporters pour se pencher sur cette situation sans précédent. Durant des mois, les journalistes ont rencontré les familles et amis des victimes, ainsi que des travailleurs sociaux. Ils ont recueilli des témoignages terrifiants de jeunes délinquants. Ils ont révélé que les prestations canadiennes d'urgence avaient pu servir à l'achat d'armes illégales qui se sont retrouvées dans la rue. Les juges ont loué le travail de l'équipe qui a su transcender les clichés à propos des gangs criminalisés. En présentant chaque personne comme un véritable être humain, les journalistes se sont assurés qu'on se rend compte que la violence des armes à feu n'est pas qu'un phénomène qui existe dans les quartiers malfamés, mais qu'elle est le symptôme d'un malaise social plus entendu dont la cause est le racisme et les inégalités sociales. In a series called What COVID Reveals, Stephanie Nolan and a team of Toronto Star journalists explored the extra burden COVID-19 placed on women, mothers, essential workers, migrants, and the homeless. For months, Nolan followed the pandemic journey of a cast of dozens, a salon owner whose planned expansion had collapsed, a mother whose career had been derailed, a migrant worker who could never find a home in Canada. The stories were enhanced by powerful photos, multimedia elements, and an affecting and provocative design. The series put the spotlight squarely on questions of public policy and was rooted in the idea that justice will be done for those who were failed during the pandemic, only if governments ensure that such mistakes never happen again. While the stories were grounded in impressive research, judges said they also soared due to compelling storytelling. Le prix John Hendrick pour le projet de l'année est décerné à La Presse. We've been through all 22 categories, and what a superb collection of winners and finalists. Congratulations to all of you. There's one more very important award to present. But before we announce the Journalist of the Year, here's an update on our efforts to make the NNAs more inclusive and representative of Canada's diversity. Au cours de l'année passée, notre Conseil des gouverneurs a entériné un bon nombre de changements. Les frais d'inscription ont été réduits pour les pigistes et les médias numériques, afin d'encourager un plus grand nombre de candidatures provenant d'un éventail plus large d'individus et de publications. 24 nouveaux juges ont été recrutés et offrent de nouvelles perspectives et différents points de vue. On peut trouver la biographie de nos 69 juges sur notre site Web. Nous les remercions pour leurs efforts empressés dans la sélection des lauréats et des finalistes parmi les centaines d'excellentes candidatures que nous avons reçues. 5 seats on the board have been allocated to representatives of equity-seeking groups rather than specific publications. Dexter Brown, Jason Chu, and Jim Compton have joined already, and 2 more new members will be appointed next week. These new members will be part of our Diversity Committee, which is guiding efforts to bring more equity to the NNAs. The committee's primary focus in the coming weeks will be creating a self-identification survey for entrants and judges. This will help us track the effectiveness of our efforts and identify areas for improvement. If you have any recommendations or ideas you'd like to share on any of this, please email us. Et maintenant, le dernier prix de la soirée. Depuis 2014, nous rendons hommage à un ou une journaliste de l'année. Nous avons créé ce prix pour honorer quelqu'un dont le travail vraiment extraordinaire mérite une reconnaissance additionnelle. Ce prix spécial a précédemment été décerné à Bruce McKinnon, Joanna Slater, Mark McKinnon, Robin Doolittle, Kevin Mitchell, Randy Richmond et, l'an dernier, Tom Cardoso. Each year, we convene a panel of distinguished journalists, including past NNA winners and experienced judges, to select the Journalist of the Year from among the winning entries. The judges truly understand what it means to produce journalism at the highest level. Our distinguished judging panel this year consisted of Carolyn Abraham, Manon Cornelier, and Satya Brada Das. Our thanks to them for reviewing tremendous work and coming together to select the Journalist of the Year. Et maintenant, j'ai le plaisir d'annoncer que pour la première fois, ce prix du journaliste de l'année est décerné à une équipe de 2 personnes. Amélie Pineda et Magdalene Boutros du journal Le Devoir. Amélie Pineda et Magdalene Boutros du Devoir ont été sélectionnées pour leur examen exceptionnel de la violence conjugale, une forme de terrorisme domestique qui a augmenté durant la pandémie de COVID-19. Elles en ont fait un champ d'intérêt particulier en réponse à cette tendance terrifiante. et ont travaillé de concert afin de décrire la situation sous tous ses angles. Amélie Pineda et Magdalene Boutros ont étudié plus d'une centaine de dossiers d'hommes accusés de tentatives de meurtre ou d'homicide involontaire contre leur conjointe ou ex-conjointe. Leur travail a souligné à quel point il est difficile pour la société d'endiguer ce fléau et de protéger les femmes qui réclament de l'aide. Judges said, their chronicle of feminicide and its ramifications, especially for children left behind, reminded us that to live free from fear is an unfulfilled promise for many. This investigation not only demonstrates how the judicial system is failing the victims of domestic violence, it also highlights the urgency of addressing these tragic shortcomings when violence in the home has been surging nationally. Like past recipients of this award, Amélie and Magdalene have eloquently demonstrated journalism's ability to bring truth to those who hold the power to change our society for the better. Félicitations à nos journalistes de l'année, Amélie Pineda et Magdalene Boutros. And indeed, congratulations to all of our winners and finalists. We will send your certificates in the coming days, and we hope to all be together at this time next year to celebrate the amazing journalism that is already being done in 2022. Thank you for tuning in. Merci et au revoir.